things underway, so a very warm welcome. So to anyone who's got to watch on the live stream, to the public, to media, councillors and staff. Just a couple of very quick notes before we get underway. So the next couple of days are going to be pretty full. We've got a lot of submissions to get through, both verbal and non-verbals. So your help will be greatly appreciated in doing that. So please, you've got the times in front of you. You can see whether we've got time for questions or not. Everyone will be given the advice that they can speak. Well, they have 5 minutes overall. They can speak and to ask questions. But basically, we do have a fairly tight time frame to stick to. So please help maintain that along the way. There are in the agenda, there's a number of apps which have been referred to as breaks. Basically, they are opportunities to catch up if we are behind, but also to get on with the non-verbal. Where it says morning or afternoon tea or lunch, that is the case for those, but the breaks, the other breaks are for catching up and getting ahead. Questions will be done as time allows, and we'll be trying to share those around as much as possible, so that everyone gets the opportunity to ask questions. The intention is to go through to about 10 past or 2:15, if possible this afternoon, and then to reconvene about 4 p.m. For the non-verbals. That will probably be a little bit like watching paint dry for those on live stream, so we probably won't be live streaming that part of it. As we experienced other times, it's basically running through pages and there's only the odd comment that might come out of it. So not the sort of thing that blockbusters are made of. No, sorry, Councillor Hopkins. Really don't have time at the moment. We're doing it that way because otherwise it's just going through a whole lot of pages and no one's saying anything about it for the most part.
Still a matter of transparency,
and the public are certainly able to be here, but I don't think there's not a lot of point holding over. Sorry, take up more time to explain these things, but there's no point having to hold it over while we do the citizenship ceremony that we've got scheduled this afternoon, to then come back and have a series of reading our page numbers and very few, if any, comments being made to them. So it is full transparency as far as the people want to be here, go through that. There's not a lot of value in that as far as having a live stream. We will go through to, as I say, 5 or 5:30, somewhere around there. We'll see how things go. Tomorrow we recommence at 10:30 and go through to 7 p.m. Councillor Timdale is away today and intends to be here tomorrow, all going well. She's just not feeling well. She is joining us by Zoom, so keep an eye on that. If there's any questions you want to ask along the way, I'll make comments. Right, so without any further ado, we've got that one apology. Councillor Tavendale, have you had any other apologies? People intending to be here the whole time?
2:30 to me, it's called that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McRovey.
tomorrow. I'm away tomorrow.
And apologies for Councillor Holden tomorrow. Okay, so I'd like to move we accept those. Councillor Halali, Councillor Hopkins. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, so moving on to the first submission. So, councillors, we've got Lindsay Rusbatch here. So, welcome, Lindsay. If you'd like to come and take a seat.
Thank you.
There. So, submission number 222 in the verbal submission.
one up.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, councillors, for this opportunity. I'm representing myself at this stage. So we'll start with the first point, which is Kakanui. We need a new bridge. I know it's on the agenda and I know that it's programmed, but we haven't seen it. We haven't seen any progress, but it's a safety issue. Once the fire station get a new fire engine, they can't use that bridge. When Mahino State Highway 1 floods, that bridge gets abused. And also we have no support from anybody to help us in those situations. Number two, a public toilet on the north side of Kakanui. At the moment, there's no public toilet on the north side. Besides, the only shop that we have in Kakanui is on the north side. It's a dairy. We have a lot of people ordering ice creams, fish and chips. They're there for a long time. There's no toilet there for them. What do? They have to go and borrow a toilet, which is really not workplace health and safety. It's not up to the store owner to supply toilets. I know it's on the agenda, and I know that that's things that the Kakanui Ratepayers and Improvement Society have talked about and are working through, but it still needs to be put into the 10-year plan. Beautification around the Kakanui coastline. What we have here, I've lived there since I was 8 years old. It's more than 50 years. We've got trees, self-sown trees that are 50 years old. We've got 60-foot eucalyptus trees beside the power lines that feed the whole of Taranui. 10 metres away, they're 60 foot high. There's three of them. If one of them falls over, Taranui, which is the south side of Kakanui, we have no power. Now, I thought you guys would be working with the Waitaki network. I mean, surely somebody would have seen that as an issue. But you've left it up to the residents, so we're highlighting that. Not only is there many trees that are so tall that people can't see around them, but they're really a safety issue. Now, down the walkway, there's a lot of walkways in Kakanui. It's a walking town. Now, down the main walkway, which is signposted from Napier Place to the school, we've got a band of 60-foot microcarpet trees right on the walkway. No one maintains them. They're the councils. They're on council land. After a storm, when branches break off, we're the ones that clean it up. There's boxthorn from the corner of Magdala Street to the start of that walkway. It's 10 foot high. It's on council land. It's a walkway to the school. That's a workplace health and safety issue. Who maintains it? The next point is the passing lane on 1,000 Acre Road that turns into Gardner Road. Now, if anyone doesn't know where that is, that's where the old beach road got washed out. So Gardner Road now meets 1,000 Acre Road. That's a potential crash site because it's only a 2-lane highway. What's that? 5 minutes?
It's 4 minutes.
4?
Are you doing phase one as well? Or
No,
is it just
because we're having an AGM tonight.
Yeah.
And we need to discuss the memorial.
Right.
And there could be other issues, but we have already put in a submission for Craze, but we want to hold it back until tomorrow,
Okay.
which I think we have the okay to. So listen, that passing lane needs looked at. There is no passing lane there at the moment. If you're traveling into town, you're on one lane. If there's a car coming the other way, that's fine. But if a car wants to turn or go around you, there's no room. It's gravel and there's a ditch. Lastly, so I only have 1 minute. Kakanui is located between the blue penguin colony and Moraki's yellow-eye penguin colony. In between all those beaches, dogs are off leash and they're not muzzled. This is an issue. There's only 90 yellow-eye penguins left at Moraki. That's a quarter of all that are in existence left in the world. We've got dogs running around killing things like this. This is a yellow-eye penguin in molt. And killing things like this. This is a yellow-eye penguin baby. Now, this is an issue that really someone in council should stand up and take on and protect. So these are native, they're rare, they're endangered, and they're being munched by dogs with no muzzles, off leash on our beaches, so they're not safe. Thank you, councillors, for your time. 5 minutes is rushed. But I hope that, well, questions.
Yeah, no, so just to respond to some of the points you've raised, so we will be following up with staff on asking for explanations around trees and so on. Normally with Network Waitaki, they identify any trees that they feel are at risk to the alliance, and we'll talk to the landowner, or if it's us, they'll talk to us, and things around the box store, etc. will ask for officers to deal with that, or first of all confirm that it is our land, so on, but what we ask what we're doing to deal with that. The slip lane for 1000 Acre Road will again pass on to the roading team for comment on that one. Just see, you know, is it seen as a priority? I understand where you're coming from. Just need to find out, is it
increased traffic volumes? Kakanui's doubled in size.
Yes. So I mean, it's definitely getting more pressure.
Yes.
Same with a lot of our roads. So it's trying to figure out where the priorities are for that. And we absolutely support your call for a replacement for the Kakanui Bridge, and we really keep pushing like we've got a toe here.
Yes.
Sorry, for a response to that, to bring forward in the plan. So,
right.
And
the yellow-eye penguins, Gary?
Yellow-eye penguins, yes. So anyone who has a dog is supposed to have it under control. That's first and foremost. But you raise a good point, and whether there should be something more in our bylaw which says that they actually need to be on leash on those beaches, then that's something that's definitely worth looking at.
Or you could issue a muzzle for every dog, and then they could be off leash.
Very, very expensive.
Yeah, I know, but it's still can't make a kid wear a crash helmet on a push bike either.
It's up to the owners to making sure they're looking after their dogs, but something in our bylaw will help that happen. That's what we're talking about. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, quick question. Number 5, you skipped over a bike trail from Oamaru to Kakanui.
I did.
Supports walking time. Yeah, it would be a great thing to have.
Yeah, sorry I missed that, but that is exactly what we would like. We were told that maybe once the bike trail was finished, the A20 extension was finished, we might get it. But yeah, that's must be on the 10-year plan, you know, because that beach road's not going to last forever. Gary knows that. We all know that. But last is a bike trail.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you, councillors.
Welcome, Mr. Park and Mrs. McElhaney to speak on behalf of the Coastline Civic Trust.
Thank you. Mayor Gary, councillors and council officers. I'll just introduce myself quickly for Councillor Jim Thompson. I'm the chairman of the Oamaru Whitestone Civic Trust. I'm also a member of the Harbour Area Committee, excuse me, and I'm also a member of the Waitaki Heritage Fund Committee. And I'd like to introduce our new Deputy Chair of the Oamaru Whitestone Civic Trust, Francis McElhaney. We're both council appointees of the Whitestone Civic Trust. So I'll be, actually, if I can be timed at 5 minutes would be good, so it gives Francis a chance. So the Waitaki Heritage Fund was established the 1st of June 1992 between the New Zealand Historic Places Trust, which is Heritage New Zealand, and the Waitaki District Council. And reading from the charter, it was agreed to establish a fund for the retention, preservation, conservation and maintenance of historic buildings and sites in the Waitaki district. And the fund shall consist of such monies as shall from time to time be set aside by the council for the purposes of the fund, together with such other monies that shall be deposited with the council for that purpose by the trust or another personal body, so by bequests and things like that. I'll just quickly, as quick as I can, give you an idea of what since 1997, what sort of outfits have been or organisations have benefit from the trust, from the fund. North Otago Yacht and Powerboat Club, the Oamaru Squash and Badminton Club, that was for they've got a Category 1 building. Project Pukitapu Monument Refurbishment in Palmerston, Oamaru Whitestone Civic Trust, the Oamaru Steam and Rail Society, Pottery on Tyne, they've got a Category 2 building. North Otago Art Society, they've got the Customs building, a Category 1. The North Otago Club was the former AMP building, a Category 1. Te Runanga o Maraki, Janet Frame Eden Street Trust, Nichols Blacksmith Historic Trust, the Phoenix Mill Restoration Trust, 26 T Street, which is the Marshall building, Casanova House, Category 1 building, Junction Hotel, and the St James Church, to name a few in Palmerston. So from the WDC Heritage Fund website states, our architectural heritage is a major asset of the Waitaki District, and the fund is currently under review and no new applications are being accepted at this stage. So recently we had Dr. Glenn Hazelton speak at our AGM, and he's from the DCC. He's a sort of heritage advisor. And I just quote a couple of things that he was instrumental actually in the rejuvenation of the Vogel Street warehouse precinct. He spoke of the character of New Zealand's small towns are strongly defined by their heritage buildings. There's often been important sites of commerce, industry, worship, residence. Their retention, reuse, and preservation can result in benefits for these towns when their potential can be unlocked. Even small amounts of funding can be valuable to owners. They indicate a recognition of the value of the work the owners are doing for their communities. It's a positive reinforcement, particularly from council and the fund committee, and can assist to leverage additional funding from other sources. And the fund, the Waitaki Heritage Fund, can give other funders greater confidence to invest in the owners' projects. Incentives like the Heritage Fund offer opportunities for the council to engage with the building owners and assist owners and achieve good heritage outcomes. Sometimes the value of a building relationship with owners is far greater than the cost of a small financial grant in the short term. It's being proactive. There's this great saying, roll out the red carpet, not the red tape. The renovated building long-term becomes more valuable and the rates will increase accordingly to pay, so a payback over time is achieved. So we are asking for a $250,000 top-up of the Waitaki Heritage Fund per annum. Thank you, and I'll get Francis to speak on the loan.
Thank you.
So as of today, the Waitaki Civic Trust has 3 loans with council. The first one is the 410,000, which, and then there's a heritage loan of 70,000, and then a second heritage loan of 52,500. This is a total of and $32,500. All the monies that come into the trust, they go back into preservation, promotion and protection of the buildings. And those buildings are such a part of civic pride, and they're a tourist attraction. It's not just the buildings, it's the people, the tenants that are in it that really make it a valuable asset in this town. And we're looking at these loans and we're thinking what the trust is asking for is that the council actually reinvest these. Well, you forgive these loans, you offer them so that they become equity that remains in the Whitestone Civic Trust, and that's equity within their buildings, and the sum would remain part of the Civic Trust for the lifespan of the trust, and then we can continue to proceed and keep uplifting the trust as it is. The trustees are all volunteers. A lot of the work that's been done, numerous hours, is done by the trustees. It's done by volunteers. We run on the smell of an oily rag. Happy to provide financial statements, which will show you how we operate. And still, it remains a successful precinct, but we really do need the support from council. No, that's in a nutshell. Yes.
Just quick question. So can you quantify the impact of COVID that's had on the trust as far as what the last year has been like?
The last year has been pretty severe on the trust. Obviously, we looked after our tenants because after the buildings, we do regard them as our assets, our main assets. We looked after them financially for a long period. And obviously, as you'll know, we've had a bit of a restructure to try and save finances. So we're doing our best to make ends meet.
The tenants were offered rent relief because they were having the largest impact, of course.
And still are some of them too.
Thank you. Councillors, Hopkins?
Yeah, couple of Francis. I'm not mistaken. You're a council appointee on the trust, aren't you?
Correct.
But this is the first time the council has heard this request. I mean, as our appointee, would it be appropriate for you to talk to us?
It was. I think we were in a very short time frame. There is a committee, subcommittee, which
Yeah, this has been talked about for some time.
Sorry, with whom?
With
Councillors. Oh, are you talking about the loan
Yes.
situation? Yeah, last council actually got very close to coming to an agreement on what might be dealt with, and certainly talked to with the council before that. So it has been an ongoing issue for quite some time that we all should be very aware of that have been here for more than the current two.
Well, it's never been formally discussed at the council meeting or in front of the full council, as far as I'm aware. But putting that aside,
no, I do need to understand you're asking Mrs. McElhenney that she should come to a full council meeting to discuss it.
I asked if she thought it was appropriate. That's all I asked. But can I just look at the loan? If I understand what you've said, we convert the loan into equity in buildings, but the equity effects of the buildings remain with you. So we would disperse the $500,000 across all the properties. Could we say we want one and it would be ours?
it would be within the trust, which is the owner of multiple properties, so it wouldn't be just one building.
So we couldn't write the loan off by converting it into a tangible asset, a bricks and mortar, a bricks and stone asset, a mortar and stone asset.
think of it as an investment in the whole precinct.
But we're not.
I think it's been asked.
All right,
answered.
that's fine.
So any other questions, councillors? Okay, thank you very much for coming in, and thank you fellow trustees for the very good work that you do. Some significant chunk of our built heritage. Appreciate it. And as part of our deliberations, we'll consider the request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, councillors, we go to non-verbals now. So we just go on to those. Go to the first one on page 10. Just give you a minute. If you open the first three files, that will give you the report and then you'll get the verbal set of verbal submissions and then the set of non-verbal submissions. So the first one is for Kelly Jones. Is anyone not there yet?
Non-verbal.
Yes.
The only comment, the only matter she's raised with us is the sports and event centre. Is that correct?
That's right. Okay, so is there anything going through to the page 20? Going to go through like that. It might be in the middle of someone's submission. It'll refer to the whole submission. Anything through to page 30? Through to
Just,
page.
sorry, just a comment coming through on the submission, talking about council encouraging responsible farming practices, capping irrigation, etc. Surely that's a function of regional council and is outside of our brief.
There's elements which might go into district plan side of things, but that's, yeah, as far as the long-term plan goes, that it's not involved in there, but just double check with Mr. Searle, are those sorts of comments being fed through the district plan review team?
They can do.
So anything that is a reference to that, to the safer thing is,
Sure.
because there's a number of ones around some of the SMA work that's going on as well, spatial planning. Spatial planning does have two elements. One is district plan, and the other is potentially long-term plan. Councillor Wallstein?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a question to our team. All these submissions, will there be a summary done, Mike, of how many submitters were in favour of the sports and events centre at 10, 12, 14? How many people were involved in smoothing or not smoothing, or smoothing over 2 years or 3 years? So there will be some summary at the end of that.
We plan to do that analysis for the 1 June deliberations day.
Right.
Yeah, so there was no time to do that for today.
No, sure.
Or
Yeah.
tomorrow. So the analysis is starting by the start of today.
Yeah.
And we have to upload that to our draft LT by Wednesday. So we're finishing our memos for deliberation by Thursday. So we should have it by the end of the week.
That's a pretty short time frame. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, anything through to page 40? Page 50?
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'll yield to you, Jim.
Councillor Holden?
So no, I was just on page 45,
Yeah.
including the budget upgrade of waiver.
Well, that was the same thing that I was going to raise, and what I would like to do is see if we could actually at least get a kind of an initial feasibility or something on that, because I think he's absolutely right. doing the tours in the Heritage Precinct, it just strikes me that it's a whole creek area is A, very historic, B, very visual, and C, very underdeveloped at the moment and under-enjoyed.
So I think what we should ask for from staff is for the 1st of June would be at least some commentary from our Parks and Recreation Manager, just around where that might fit into other work, etc., and what the process would look like to do something. So it's all good, taken on board.
Thank you.
Anything else up to page 50, Councillor?
Yeah, look, on the same one, I mean, I really do agree with Mr. Nichols' suggestion, but I suggest we go even further than that, that even right underneath the 7th Street Bridge, which needs cleaned out anyway, there's a really good walkway under there. Take the cyclists and the pedestrians off the main highway, through that bridge and into the garden. So, you know, I think this goes part way, but I'd like to go the whole way.
To reduce the flooding issue there too, wouldn't it, Councillor King?
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. Right, through to page.
Yeah, so just because very quickly, the next submission on page 48 is a reference to can we please get some fencing around the main council playgrounds, in particular gardens and steampunk? There are so many environmental hazards in these places. I was trying to work out what they were and whether in fact fencing would create another environmental hazard. Is that something that we could ask comment from the park staff from?
Well, I think it is something we need to get some comment on. There seems to be a bit of a recurrent theme, number of comments around playgrounds, including the Palmerston Bike Park and Skate Park. I think there is increasing sensitivity to playgrounds open to roads and the ability for youngsters to make escapes and get themselves into trouble. So it would be good to get a comment on each of those where it's raised and say what's feasible. I think Palmerston, for example, is upside the stormwater drain, which is rather deep. It raises some issues there as well. So I think that would be good.
And just finally, could we pass on the next one, the lady from Duntroon asking for a change in the speed limits? Could we pass that on to Wakakatahi? I mean, we can't do it.
There's work already going in that area, already happening following the visit that Eric Van Steep and I had there.
Okay.
So there's a range of issues in Duntroon around traffic safety, around speed, around crossing points, around access from one side to the other, all the way through that area, and issues with unformed parking that happens in there as well. Okay, anything through?
Just on the same point, we move on. Just I was surprised to hear that the speed warning sign entering Duntroon from the east is shared between Duntroon and Mahino. And for the last while, it has been posted permanently in Mahino. So Duntroon has had no speed warning sign there for some months. Years. Who knows when it's going to come back? Yeah. So I'd like the council to also press Wakakatahi to have a permanent speed warning sign. They're not on the shared with other locations.
I agree with that. Totally cheap.
The second point, another point this submission raised also was the location of the toilets in Duntroon. There's a number of submissions on that point, so this is just one of
Okay. Just when you're referring to submissions, if you can put give the page number each time.
being the number in red. So,
Yeah, if you use, yeah, I think we use that red page number. There's dual numbers on there, so refer to that one.
Yeah, it was page 49 as it's referring to.
Okay, anything through to page 60?
Just curious, I'm not sure, sorry, on page 56, it's the submission from Linda Scott Arrayo. Arrayo, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I haven't. And just that, I don't know what we do about this, although she does talk about workshops and things of that nature as a solution to some of the issues she raises. But this idea of people being bullied when attempting to volunteer and when volunteering in some groups, I'm just wondering if you know about it. Is the community board, is there anything we can do? Is it a Curao issue or?
Oh, look, I'm not sure of the chair, I just like comment, when I read that, I got in touch with her.
Yes.
She's the owner of Curao.
Yes.
With her husband, I think. And there are some deep underlying issues, not just with Curao, she's now volunteering back at the museum, but also have been some issues, as she's mentioned, perhaps not here, but outside of here. In a couple of other areas, she now no longer does the editorial work was done through Digger. She certainly feels like she's probably, I think, quite helpful. There is a one-on-one discussion with her about that, but I read that. It was said to her she was very brave to write this because it's a public document. Good on her, goes to say it. And I think we need to just be cognizant of it and happy to take this to the chair of the community board as well.
I think the reality is it's much broader than the community board. It's a national issue, but it's something that if we're going to address it, it's working with Safe Waitaki and some of the other opportunities that we have, organisations like that. It's using our comms team, and it's definitely about people speaking up and us backing them to actually get rid of some of the antagonism out of some of the commentary that it's not doing anyone any favours, and I think it's just got worse over the last year. That's due to COVID or something else. That's the whole lady.
Yeah, just to respond to some of the comments that she made, last week. That was one of the issues that was raised as well by migrants. So we're looking at a district-wide strategy around that.
Okay, question from Councillor Tavendale. She put a couple on chat, but I can't see that, so she's just texting through, so which is easier. Page 47, just asking about pricing for recycling bins in town. So it's the public rubbish bins and also having a recycling bin beside it. It would be good to know what the effectiveness is. Issues elsewhere around cross-contamination with them, and just seeing is there a good amount of usable recyclables happening there, or is it a lot of cost for a little benefit because of cross-contamination? Question I'd ask on that. It's also just asking around a pedestrian crossing being an option for Duntroon. We've had some discussion on that. Certainly a possibility around having a crossing point rather than necessarily a pedestrian crossing, but something that definitely does make it safer for the community. Same issues obviously in Otapatana as well, and a number of other communities around the district, trying to get people to slow down and be more aware of others using the road space. Okay, anything else on page 60?
Very quickly, quite a number of submissions on waste and I know a survey, but still there is commentary being made, even small commentary being made, and I'd like to think that perhaps we can still, through our waste minimisation person, do some work on this to address some of these issues that have been raised here. I know the survey sort of was a 50-50 survey, but I think there still needs to be more work done because the emphasis has been coming through on the climate change questions, quite a number of commentary, quite a lot of commentary about waste under that heading as well. So I think does need to be more done on that.
Yeah, I think in some ways there are two they are separate topics because a lot of it's just pollution, not necessarily climate change inducing, but on the other hand, they're all problems. And there's been quite a few comments that they don't want a curbside system because of, they're already dealing with their waste and recycling, and it's cheaper than the $350 quoted. But equally, there's a good number saying they do want it. I think what would be good to do is look at an opt-in system where we went to the market and said, we collected this by a rate system, how much would it be based on a certain number of households opting in, essentially. Because at the moment, the services are there, albeit very much not so much. But how do we make it available, and how do we encourage people to recycle more? How do we get them to reduce their waste? So there's definitely some issues there, and it'd be good to get some feedback from a waste management officer. Okay, anything else through to 60?
Well, Razor, that's an issue that's got to be explored pretty thoroughly. I mean, if you had an opt-in system, what would it have? What effect would it have on the people who opted out? Would it actually take the services they're currently enjoying away from them? And would that particularly impact older people who are low waste generators and are probably benefiting from some of the options in the market?
Yes, exactly.
So, I mean, I think we need to be,
for the benefit of time, I was trying to keep it fairly succinct, but
Yeah.
the idea is to get a report with the various implications. It's not just one aspect, ignore the other results that come out of it. Okay.
can I just break, before page 60?
Yep.
I note again that James Lockman's submission, which is the last before page 60, his final comment, something really needs to be done about Airbnbs and the impact they have on the established accommodation businesses in the area. It's not only affecting them, but also limiting housing availability for residents. I really do think we need to have a conversation with the accommodation sector about this, and perhaps also with other local councils. I noticed that Christchurch is just getting more information. It was trying to take some steps to manage or impose some charges on Airbnbs, but the information apparently was insufficient or inaccurate. So they're sort of not exactly back to the drawing board, but it's an issue that needs to be addressed, I think, and we probably need to have a proper conversation in the sooner rather than later with existing moteliers and other accommodation providers first and foremost.
We had that discussion several years ago, and I don't think they will have changed their minds about it. I agree. That is that something needs to be done about it, and the playing field needs to be level a bit, and some of the excesses need to be taken care of. People are allowed to have up to 5 people staying before it triggers the need for higher levels of rules around fire plans and facilities, and we know there are ones that have significantly more than those numbers staying. There's also the impact on those who are playing by the rules, and those who are versus those who aren't. So we did that. We also had a conversation lead up to this long-term plan where we talked about Airbnb, and the majority view was that it was too difficult. But we said all of that. Just hand it to Mr. Howard.
Yeah, I think there are two elements here. One is that bed and breakfast are one element of accommodation. The other is Airbnbs, which are obviously the utilisation of an entire home where the people who own home are not resident, or perhaps a studio or something like that. We have 301 Airbnbs in the district currently. They go out at an average cost of $160 a night and a 40% occupancy rate on an annualized basis, but they're distributed throughout the entire region. And in terms of things such as outs to ocean, obviously one of the limitations in terms of our increasing utilisation of the outs to ocean as New Zealand's preeminent national cycleway is the availability of accommodation. So utilising accommodation in those more distant parts of the district is a really sensible way to go. It's obviously a discussion that needs to be had by council from time to time. And you'll recall that in my last chief executive's report, there was an item dedicated to the issue of Airbnb, and I'll refer you back to that again. It is an interesting topic.
Councillor Wallstein?
Well, just a quick comment on that. I think COVID has dealt with local Airbnb. A lot of the Airbnbs I'm aware of in my area are no longer trading as Airbnbs. A number of them have been sold. So
That's right. The number of Airbnbs is reduced by 33%, or 34% actually, since COVID-19.
I was just going to comment, page 61, a question, Stephen, there about climate change. I think all councillors should cycle to meetings. That's something we all need to consider. Just a little bit earlier off in the morning.
Sure.
How long?
Might take a few hours.
With due respect, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ride my horse, but I've got nowhere to ride it on the main.
But you could use what it produces as biogas or convert it to biogas.
Could we construct some sort of trail for you from the kingdom of Dumback to Oamaru? Okay. Moving through to page 70.
Yeah, because just a couple of things. I was interested, I think there's well, sorry, I'm talking about the Sandra Backhouse and also the submission from Justinius Udistra, both of whom asked for the free parking for an hour and a half, or to keep it going. And in the earlier series of non-verbal submissions was another thank you for having free parking during COVID. So although we didn't bring it up, I think it's worth noting that, you know, a not inconsiderable number of people have sensed that, you know, see that as a benefit that they'd like us to think about. So I'm just flagging that it would be good if we put that on the list of things to consider. And the other question I had in that bracket of 10 pages was the email from, is it Ella Detroit, suggesting that we replace council-owned vehicles with battery-operated ones. And there was somebody else, I think a verbal submission raises the possibility of switching to hybrid vehicles. Is there any consideration of that from management, Mr. Power?
Yes, we keep our eye on this area constantly, because we are such a large district in terms of aerial extent, with sometimes return travel times of several hundred kilometres for some of our construction officers. There is a difficulty there. EV vehicles are, of course, relatively expensive relative to conventional as well, but we are looking at bringing in EV vehicles and hybrids where it makes sense to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, anything else through to page 70? Just got a comment. Sure what it's referring to, but from Councillor Tavendale, just commenting on the weighting of sustainable methods in their contracts. So, you know, we've talked very recently about the potential for social procurement, and this is also included, and that can be the environmental procurement, so taking into consideration various effects of on the environment that a contractor might look at and might put in place to mitigate the effects of that. So it's just something there. Should be number 2. So, sorry, 7. Right. So that's a climate change question. So I think getting some commentary back on social procurement overall, looking at what's considered best practice around the country. Okay, anything else to page 70? Page 80?
Page 73, Mayor Gertrude, Jenny Kitchen on climate change, very sensible comments regarding planting the right tree in the right place and limiting planting fines. We all support the comments there. Question 7, page 73.
I would,
Question 8. So, yeah, absolutely. It's a position we definitely taking as much as we can. Indeed, Councillor Hopkins.
I was also interested to see her suggesting that the WDC support farmers in riparian planting in innovative ways of keeping waterways clean, protecting biodiversity,
Which we are.
no, I'm not saying we're not, I'm just saying that I took it that she was arguing for perhaps more than currently is the case, more support than currently is the case, but
Yeah, I think, there was a number of suggestions along the way that people were make about things we could be doing, and sometimes it does need to be pointed out that we are already funding some initiatives and working with groups such as NOSLAN, funding, working with DCAN through zone committees and so on, and helping utilise their funding for those sorts of things as well. So there's definitely a number of initiatives underway. Okay. Yeah, right, anything through the page 90?
sorry, just a question, perhaps to staff as much as anything, just looking at Katrina Hazelhurst's submission, and there's a couple of others like this as well, just saying,
Page, please.
Page 80, sorry. Question 12. Do you have any comments on rates affordability? It seems that sometimes people are skipping the question about whether or not things should be, whether the council option 1 should be chosen or smoothing. But how do you think, or how do you intend to interpret these ones that say, stop wasting money, rates are too high, things should be affordable and they shouldn't be as high as they are? How do you propose to fit those into those 4 options or 3 options that we put in the consultation document?
Without thinking about it too much, I wouldn't be.
Okay.
I will be giving you the numbers and some pie charts to show you what the figures are in terms of what options they have chosen. But for those sorts of comments, you're actually seeing them now, and I don't see us doing any more analysis on that, unless you request it.
Well, unless you just said 20% of people said rates are too high or something like that.
I think, I mean,
I don't know.
it's trying to get quality comments in there, and one of the things that certainly when I've been promoting a number of times through the process of promoting people to go using the consultation document, go and take the opportunity to have a look through, not only answer the questions but tell us what they would like to see us do or not do. Having comments about what things that they would see that we could cut as part of that, because that's part of the reality is that we have to actually do more, and that's one of the reasons why the increase is what it is. But what are the things that we should stop doing, which would save some money? The other part of it, as you may not have been at the workshop, but during the consultation period, we had a workshop on the LTP where we looked at other potential ways to save money and start working on options around that. And it's definitely part of the overall process, even though we're sitting looking at an 8.9% increase. What are we doing? What are things we could do, tools we could use to lower that increase? So that's something we'll keep doing. Okay, that's through to page 90. Yes.
Well, just again, Katrina Hazelhurst's second submission specifically related to Geopark. And I've had there's at least one verbal submission making similar sorts of points. So I do think that one of the things we have to do, she says, I submit that Geopark goals, that Geopark is unsuitable for further council investment and then gives reasons. Don't intend to debate them now, but I just think we need to include the future of Geopark as a decision to be made on June 1st. That's all.
As is everything.
Well, indeed, no, you're right. I agree.
Thank you.
That's it.
Wonderful. Councillor Holding.
Yeah, there is a lot of recurring themes in some of these submissions. That's about extracting that into something we can deliberate on properly, rather than speaking to each one individually.
So the key thing is just to raise them and see whether there's time for officers to bring back further information, deliberations. So we'll stop at number 90 here. Simon Smith here. So back to the verbals and so page 15 on the verbals. And Sonia, welcome. So I'd like to come and take a seat here. So thank you very much.
Just here?
Yeah, any of the seats, fine. So thank you for making your submission. So we have gone through it, but for you to speak to your submission and just reiterating anything or expanding.
Yeah, well, mainly it was that I didn't know that councils had CEOs, but I've looked up on the computer and found out that they've been at least around in the 80s. But one thing about the CEO was that they are supposed to be looking after administration rather than policy. When I was reading in the paper about the Waihemo Council were having a by-election, they said that the one guy commented that the CEO had been the instigator of the Geopark in the first place, and it wouldn't have been happening had it not been for their input, and then they had left. So they basically came here, started up the Geopark idea, and then they have left, and now we're stuck with it. I don't believe in geoparks myself. I think they're just a waste of time and effort. I don't even know exactly what the heck they're supposed to be, but I don't think we need them. And the other thing that I was really worried about was the Three Waters idea that the government's come out with now. They seem to be taking stuff away from the councils at an alarming rate. And I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with hospitals now, but with the Three Waters, it seems to me that what they're trying to do is move it away from local governance to a broader outfit, and then it could end up overseas, just like everything else that the government gets a hold of, like the phones and the power and everything, and we end up having no rights over the water that is freely available in our rivers and everything that is for everybody. It's going to be locked up and nobody will be able to, and by then it'll be too late for anybody to do anything about it. That is my main worry. As far as climate change is, I'm a climate change denier. I think climate does change, but it's not something that we control, and it's not something that we have an impact on, and it's certainly got nothing to do with any natural existing thing like cows and that. Like somebody commented the other day, when America was covered in buffalo, you didn't see global warming back in the day, but now there's bigger all buffalo, and you know, it's just ridiculous. But I can't remember half the other things that were in there. But they're my main points. I think council needs to stick to their core services. And if it's not a need that everybody has, it's not a need that needs to be, the council needs to be worried about. If people want, if special interest groups want something, then they should be funding it themselves. And user pays, we hear all about user pays, but we still pay for things that we don't use. So I think it's just a worry that, you know, our rates are rising higher than Auckland's rates are rising this year. And where I live especially, we see very little for what rates we're paying now. It's just, that's my main.
No, good, Carl. No, thank you for that. Just to respond to a couple of things, the geopark was originally brought to us by Vanished World. And, certainly the CEO, who was still here for another 2 weeks, picked it up and ran with it, but it was with our agreement and blessing that we did that. So take on board your comments on that. The Three Waters, yeah, that was the other one. So the government sees there is a problem across councils. We actually believe that Waitaki is in a better position than most councils. We have actually funded the depreciation over years of our water assets. We've upgraded before it's needed to be done. We still have some more water upgrades to deal with. Our wastewater is treated properly and is disposed of on land, not in waterways. Those standards might rise, is the expectation, and that could be a more costly expense for ratepayers. But generally speaking, we've been doing water really well. So it's one of those issues that we're not, you know, there's a lot of councils that aren't as good position as what we are, but the government's dealing with this as a whole.
Yes, as they generally do.
Councillor Hopkins?
Yes, one very quick question. Thank you, Mayor Coacher. In response to the question about waste minimisation and education, what waste minimisation and education activities would you like to see the council doing? Your answer, your response was realistic ones that make a difference. So what do you think they would be?
Well, just, I mean, you could put out a form that tells people what they can do with their waste and that, you know, and put it in their letterboxes. That would be, if people are going to do it. I mean, I don't agree that global warming is a problem. I don't actually. I think humans are so minuscule on the earth that they could not possibly have anything to do with global warming. But I still recycle and I still try to minimise waste. And just as a natural person living on the earth, you have to look after it. And people who just, so, you know, you don't go out, you become a producer, not a consumer. You look after what you've got and everything. But a lot of people are, especially probably in town, not so good on, you know, keeping their waste to a minimum and recycling and that. But just an education pamphlet would probably suffice as far as that goes. And if people are going to do it, they're going to do it. Or maybe you might want to, you know, have workshops. I mean, they've got the community gardens. They could teach the people when they went there about waste minimisation and stuff as well. And, you know, composting and things like that. Just use.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for the answer.
Councillor McGrovey?
Yes, Sonia, thanks for the presentation. Look, if you're interested in what the submissions were from both Vanished World and Geopark Trust in 215 and 233, if you want to read them, they're a public document. So both those, they try and read them together, but not that they're being submitted together, but they make good reading if you're interested.
Good as,
215 and 233.
255. Got a pen.
Okay. I'm just going to write it down for you. Okay, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Today. Next we have Steve Holland. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Good morning. My name is Christine Holland. My husband and I dairy farm on Wainakura Road, and I've written this submission, which I will read. I'm hoping the council is thinking about rural roads in regard to new quarries, forestry development, etc. in the next 10 years. Rural land use is changing rapidly. Lots of rural roads are gravel, single lane, poor visibility, poor pull-off passing areas, and not designed for multiple and many heavy truck and trailer movements per day as per their consents. I'm wanting the council to consider, when consents are granted for new development, that they may take into account the effects on the current roading network and the people already living on these roads. We all want the ability to hang our washing on the line, open our windows, pull out our driveway safely, and have school kids catching the bus, etc. It is not good enough to be told, once the consent is granted, if you have a problem with the road and dust, etc., you need to take it up with the council. We want the effects mitigated and the roads upgraded and tar sealed at the start of the development. It should be factored into the development and not something that we have to argue with the council about after the fact. I'm not against development in the district, but rural roads are often not designed for heavy use. And if you allow the use, upgrade the road. So what made me think about this problem is land use is changing. We have a proposed quarry down our way, and I found out if the quarry is consented and we have a problem with the road, it's our job to take it up with the council. Why should the residents have to do that? You know, there must be a better way. We also live close to, and I'm often walking and biking up Mount Misery Road. I've seen the long and arduous process it has been to tar seal that portion of road and how problematic the logging trucks have been for the residents up there. My parents live up at Tokarahi, close to the forestry, and I've only just recently realised my mum has been unable to open her windows or hang out the washing on the line over summer when the forestry trucks were going because of the dust. So then this made me think of when we converted our farm. We wanted to cross cows over Wainak Road for milking. We realised if we wanted to do that, we needed to factor in an underpass. It was just part of the cost of conversion. If we couldn't afford an underpass, we shouldn't have been making a dairy farm. So I also realised these big companies pay lots of road user charges, but for big developments with consents granting regular and many heavy truck and trailer movements per day, they should be having to upgrade the roading, especially near housing, as part of the consenting process, and it factored into the cost of operations. These rural roads have been potentially designed more than 50 years ago and not designed for frequent and heavy use. Anyhow, that's my submission. Thank you very much.
Thanks for saying some very good points. Do we have any questions?
Well,
Councillor Holding?
I was going to say, I think Mount Misery Road is more one submission on that.
I mean, it's been tar sealed now, but yes, but it's taken them a long time to get that done. So I suppose I'm just wanting you to, and I realise there's no easy fix, you know, like before a development happens, you know, like we knew when we were putting our cow shed that if we wanted a cow shed, a dairy farm, we need to put an underpass in, because I didn't think we were allowed to do it without one. I don't know if that actually is the rule, but you know, we're not talking about, you know, a movement once a day, or, you know, some of these developments are many movements in a day, 6 days a week, 6 till 6.
Yeah, certainly forestry has been an issue where they don't do anything for 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And then it's all on. And so created a special rate to put money aside. That's for properties that are predominantly used for forestry, not a bit of forestry on the farm, for example.
Yeah.
That will help that situation. But yeah, there are other issues that this information needs to go partly to the district plan review and talk about that consenting side of things. And the other part is how we actually deal with that increased impact on roads as a roading authority. So,
yeah.
Take your points there. So I'll go to Councillor Wallstein, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Christine, for your thoughts. But just one thing struck me when you talk about it. You converted your farm into a dairy farm.
Yeah.
What about the cost of the milk tanker using the road morning and night?
It's, well, so yes, it's ironic, isn't it? So, but so our milk tanker, so it only comes once a day or every second day from August through till, we're May, and we're lucky we live on a Tarsiel road, but actually we're not talking, so that's one movement, isn't it? We're not talking about, the proposed quarry, if that goes ahead, that is not one movement a day. That's not what they're applying for, and that's not what's allowed for in the plan.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor Kirchner. We've got to find it, but this is, you're raising issues about consenting activities, and we need to be that in the district plan. Are you planning to make a submission to the draft when that comes out later in the year? Because I would encourage you to do so. I mean, essentially, that's where this argument sits. That the rules of applying to activities should have a condition about the upgrade of roads in whole part.
I'm not a planner at all, but it seems very frustrating when planners use the terms less than effects are less than minor.
Well, and the argument is that they're not,
No.
obviously. World Health Organization deems dust to be a real issue.
So,
no, we've got it. Yeah, thank you.
We'll pass that on to the team, and then whether they can treat it as a submission, we'll see whether they can. But it's a long-term plan budgeting side of things. Yes, thank you. If you go and speak to Mr. Searle over there, he'll let you know what's happening. Right, next we welcome Karen Lawrence. So, morning, Karen.
Morning.
Welcome to the chamber.
Gosh, I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm more at home on the farm. However, I do feel very strongly about the proposal to have the new improved toilets placed on the village green in Duntroon. And if you've read my submission, you'll understand the points I've raised. But basically, and I'm going to try and read my own, the first and most crucial point is that the location isn't safe. It's already congested with traffic coming, people come off the bridge heading west, and they swing around and there's a town right there. And they have to swing wide to get past the traffic that's already parked on front of the hotel. And we've got people crossing over from the Ulster Ocean. We've got a road coming from the river, a road coming from the domain, going into the school, coming out of the school. We've got all this traffic converging on that one area. And to put the toilets there would mean that people are going to come into Duntroon, come around the corner, and somebody slowed down or stopped to turn right to go into the toilet. And they're going to run right up over somebody. So to me, the most crucial thing is that we think ahead and say, okay, this we have to take some responsibility for creating even more congestion at that point. And the other thing is that we have cyclists coming off the Ulster Ocean and coming across. And if you have people, we're going to have people going across, pedestrians going across the road as well as all this traffic coming through. So basically, I feel that it's an accident waiting to happen. The second part is that this toilet and the car parking is going to be right beside somebody's residence. It's a private residence there now. And I don't know that any of us would like a public toilet beside our own property. Not for any other reason that you're creating an opportunity for people to come and go at all hours of the night, day and night, and some of those people aren't always quiet. And I wonder just how does that affect the value of their property? And is it fair to do that to them? The other point is that
the village green itself is valued by the locals. It's also valued by tourists and other people, even tradespeople who stop and use it. I say we, a group of volunteers, has spent a lot of time and energy, and we've got picnic tables there that are utilised by so many people. And it's got trees there that are memorials. My personal concern is that if the toilets are placed there, and because of the congestion of the traffic, and there's an accident, somebody will come out of the woodwork after there's an inquiry to say, oh, I think it's the memorial oak. Let's get rid of that, or let's get rid of that tree and that tree. And before you know it, we've lost any semblance of a green space. That really concerns me. And I find it ironic because I'm one of those people who had a letter from the council saying your property is, I'm sorry, I didn't realise I had so little time. Sorry?
You have another minute.
I've got another, okay. So the other crucial point I want to make is that the DDDA has making available another location, and it makes sense to me to put the toilets over on that side of the street, on the left-hand side of the street, where you've got all the pedestrian traffic and all the attractions for people. And for them to forfeit their own assets, I just feel that it shouldn't come to that point. We shouldn't have to do that in order to get council to see common sense. And I hope that somehow you will understand the imperatives in the situation and accept and change your proposal, shift the toilets to the other side.
Yeah, certainly we need to have a bigger discussion with the community and talk about it. I mean, you talk a lot about the road safety issues.
Yes.
Do you think, regardless of where the toilet goes, we actually need to deal with those as best we can?
Well, yes, they will be there. That will come into it, I'm sure. The location on the left-hand side of the road on the south side of Campbell Street will have less problems. It's less problematic than the one on the right-hand side of the road. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Any questions?
Oh, sorry, just one very quickly, if I may, Mayor Future. You also talked about you wanted the council to include horse riders when developing trails. And you said that riders and drivers have been ignored for far too long.
Yes.
As I understand it, there are real issues of sort of compatibility with if you have walkers and cyclists and horses on the same trail. Were you envisaging separate trails for horses or shared use of trails that exist?
Well, there are places where it's practical to have shared use, and there are places where it's not. At the moment, it seems like horse people are excluded. That's it. The mindset is we're not having them. Whereas I've noticed that we're the council and we're allowed to incorporate other people. Where there's problems, they've been able to find ways about it. And like we have problems with cyclists and motorists. So what do? We put them in the cycle lane, and then we put in bollards and things like that. Where people have decided, yes, we'll incorporate these, they've been able to find some solution. That at the moment, the mindset coming through is that no, horses not here, not there, not there, and the roads are becoming so increasingly dangerous, and it's getting to the stage where there are very, very few places to ride, and we pay our rates, and in fact some of us pay more rates because we have a horse. We've got land, we've got to pay for that. So there is a groundswell throughout New Zealand of determination that horses and equestrian should be accommodated in some way in our rates or by the council and their legislation somewhere.
Thank you, Karen. We certainly are having some discussions around areas that we control, where horse riding might be a possibility. So we'll see how that goes.
Right.
Can't promise anything at the moment.
No,
So it's something that we certainly are hearing backgrounds well.
yes, no, well, one issue is that, I'm going to wear out my welcome, is that even the bridle path, the one up in Otakai, we're even excluded from that, so okay, we might not be able to afford to put in a track or trail for horses, but we may have to consider allowing us access in some places.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
For coming in. Thank you, councillors. We'll haven't got our next submitter here, so if we go back to non-verbals, got up to page 90 to ask if there's any through page. So 120.
Yes, yes, no.
We know what it is, Mayor, we just don't know how to get there.
90 to 100.
Just one comment there, that on page 98, the submitter mentioned erosion of our coastline, and there's quite a few comments all the way through, mentioned coastal erosion as a problem with climate change, so just, I'm sure that will come out in your report, Mr. Sewer, when you head all those up.
Make sure I put that in there.
Thank you.
I think we already have that in lots of our asset management plans around what we do with that and in our strategies. So it is part of the consideration. Anything else? Through to 100. That go through to 110.
Yeah, hold on. So we're going between 100 and 110.
I think
It's interesting, the sort of varying views on rates moving.
it's almost as though we'd asked the question.
Well, no, it just looked as though, I mean, I looked as though it's about 50-50, I'm not sure, but that's just a kind of a rough. I haven't kept a proper formal tally, I should have.
That's the analysis that's been done on this, Mr. Silver's point.
And the other thing that's interesting is it's all the climate change submissions so far have sort of essentially said, well, the one at 107, you know, I think, is it Peter Scott or one after absolutely nothing? It's a beat up. Climate's always changed, always will. Is it? No, Mark Patton, I should say, sorry. Yeah, it's struck me that there's a bit more pushback on that matter than perhaps them in Wellington might have assumed or wanted.
Distracted me to forget which one I was up to. Was that 110?
That was 107, I think it was Mark Patton.
So anything through to 120? That's the thing.
Mr. Chair, page 111, Cheryl Black. I mean, quite a few of the submitters are pointing out sort of the negative type things. There's a real positive one here that they're saying this is a great place to raise a family, and they're actually saying well done to the council and thanks. I think we should highlight that every now and again.
Yes, I agree with them.
There's certainly been a few, and we're a little more positive. I mean, it is easy to point out negatives, because that's kind of what we want to address. But people taking the time to write, happy is also good. Councillor Austin.
No, I was actually going to highlight the same thing.
Oh.
Councillor King and just raised, so that's.
Anything else through to 120? Go through to 130.
Oh, there's just flagging again, 116, another reference to, I should have done it earlier, sorry. Another reference to free parking. This one from, sorry, forgive me.
Okay, we don't,
Melissa.
if we've already brought it up,
No, but it's
take
just
it as being.
Yeah.
I'm interested in moving. So one through to 130. Go through to 140. Councillor Holden.
Probably just, that's been raised in another submissions as transport around the district. In some form.
Yeah, we had talked to ORC about the potential for a passenger public transport. I don't know if anyone's seen whether there was any proposals in their regional plan, in their sorry, long-term plan. Haven't seen it.
Haven't looked at their long-term plan.
Okay. So, yeah, it's something where I think there would be reasonable support. There is a service, but it's not well known or publicised. To have a regular service, and particularly with the ease of the different cards and so on that people have, the apps to be able to use them very easily. Anything else through to 130?
Sorry, just 122, Kelly Breeze, she just makes an interesting comment about coastal roads, essentially arguing for a sort of a targeted rate. If you look at her climate change comments, she talks about response to climate change. I would like to see very careful consideration of how the costs and benefits of coastal roads are distributed, specifically where those costs are forecast to increase due to coastal erosion. I think increasing costs should be borne by new buyers of land, probably current occupiers, which is serviced by such roads, rather than existing occupiers. Okay, I misread that in the early hours of this morning. But I mean, she raises an interesting issue, and I know we fund roading district-wide. Would we want to decouple coastal roading as part of a response to climate change? I pose it as a question, I don't have an answer.
I think our managed retreat strategy is generally the one that we need to go by. I think if we treat roading like a network, if we want to do something differently, we need to signal that to officers. Is there an appetite to look at anything different? Council?
Yeah, well, yes, I have. I think we've talked about this in the past. The cost of upgrading some of these roads to have an alternative route it would be a huge cost. That money could probably put into trying to save the coastal road, maybe. So I think it's a discussion that needs to be had.
Well, I think that fits with the strategy. I mean, if it's still cost effective to protect the road, then we do that. But at some point, it becomes cost prohibitive to do that. And the cheaper thing is to move it back from the coast, and that's what happens. But it's more around who pays for it, and do we treat it any differently to the rest of the network, which is district-wide? Not hearing support that we change that.
Well, there is an argument that those nearby get the most benefit, but I mean, if you start doing that, then you could make the same argument for every road in the district, and you could end up. I mean, I'm just simply saying that she raises a point about funding.
I think we're going to move on from that one.
Nice comment at the end of it, though, to start about the document. This council doing a good job, general.
Indeed.
It's just we're being positive about the thing.
Right, anything through to page 140? It's hard keeping up with sort of going backwards. Anything through to 150?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I noticed on page 142, 148 and jumping slightly to 151. There's all comments about how council can interact better with their community. And it's obvious from people's comments that we need to upskill as a council on how we interface with people. And it may be something that we as a council need to assist our staff with. I know that we're talking about technology such as body cameras, etc. But perhaps if we're approaching people who, as ratepayers, do perceive themselves as paying the salary of council staff, that we might preempt some of the bad feelings and bad press that we get.
Yeah, well, I made two observations. Firstly, body cameras are only used in terms of the risk matrix that staff are facing. So unfortunately, staff do have to deal with all people, and not all people are necessarily reasonable. Secondly, in terms of the regular 4 times a year surveys, which are undertaken throughout the district by an independent consultancy, which looks at the interaction between council and its residents, we actually achieve an excellent score across all measured areas, whether Maori, non-Maori, every age group, and it's really an enviable kind of result for this council in comparison to others. But there's always an opportunity for us to do better, and certainly over the last few years, we have increased our communication efforts. So we have some very capable communication staff, website activity, social media activity, and general media publications have gone up enormously. So it's something that this council should feel well satisfied with. In relation to this LTP process, in relation to the last LTP in 2018, the submissions rate has gone up 170% in excess of submissions in 2018. And again, that's a remarkable outcome that I think this council is very proud of.
Just a comment or question from Councillor Tavendale, page 144, number 13. Just taking note of things that pretty much are customer requests, so they're being taken as such by staff. Customer requests being created out of those. So
Is
business as usual.
Just as a question, is Councillor Tavendale talking about the references to Eaton Street and so forth on 144 from Bruce Smith? Is that the matter that? The likes of Eden Street.
Right, so just got to go back. I've got the wrong question.
Question 13. Is that the one? Sorry, I mean.
Yep.
That's the one that Darren's talking about.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what I
it is,
thought.
yep.
Yes.
So seal breaking up. Okay.
The only other comment I was going to raise with that submission is that reference to having a community hub, and I think he's saying he's declining. His argument is to decline the indoor sports and event centre. Then goes on to say it looks as though the decision has been made to build it. Why not look at including a community hub or community as part of it? So it just seems to me that's possibly something that could perhaps be considered as part of the proposal, depending on how we assess community response to the consultation document.
Okay. Right, councillors. It's now lunchtime, so we'll have a break now and reconvene at 12:45. So see you back here at that time.
Is April Hayes Dixon coming, or do we know if she's?
No, she's not. We're all back again. So welcome back, everyone. Just going back to the bond verbal. So page 151 to 160. So I'll just make sure everyone's on the same pages.
Which page, please?
Page 151 to 160. Okay.
So page 161, the Untitled Residents Association, looking for technical support funding and ongoing, I know the master plans are in place. Is there any certain funding tagged in your projects?
Page 161, did you say?
Page 162, 161. Sorry, 161.
Okay, so yeah, the Untitled has been doing the customer community-led development projects, and have come up with or identified a lot of projects. So Councillor McRoe, they won't have had the chance to feed that into our plans yet.
No, they haven't, but there is funding in the long-term plan years out about 25, 26 for matters that arose as an enumeration as well, but matters that arose during the master plan process in both those towns. And I guess what they're saying here is that there'll be some assistance required with some of the preliminary work, that the major amount of work will come from the CLD program, the DIA. So they're just asking, and I don't doubt if they can continue to get support, whether it be through approval processes or whatever, for the three main projects that the town is going to be starting soon. One is the beautification, one is the playground, or Kakanui Park, as it's now been called, entranceway beautification, and part of that, as well as an extension to the wetlands development. Most of the capital that would appear is contained through the DIA, so no major capital costs.
The ongoing maintenance, the entrance treatment, is that part of traffic calming?
Yes, it is. That's part of it as well. Yes, it is. And they're just waiting, I believe, for a final draft plan from Baxter Design, who they've been using as consultants to help with that. So they've done the first plan, that was then consulted on, now waiting for there, now waiting for a plan back. I think that's that.
So I think what we need is some advice from Mr. Vanderspeak and Mr. Harrison, that part of it will be on that roading side of things, just around what their response is to the plans and to the request for funding or support, technical support, etc.
Yeah, part of that may well be that there's a fencing project as well. The fence around the park is pretty dilapidated. They'd like to fix that, sort that, modernize that as well. So, but that's all part of the project.
Yeah. So I think an initial response might not go into all the detail of exactly what. It's something that I guess as council, are we happy with the consultation that's been had and the responses and the summary that the group has come up with? So I think it has been a very good, thorough process, and we need to weigh those things up.
Actually, the DIA held the process around that through the working governance group, through the working group and governance group has been exemplary. At least one in the country looked at as a model. So very, very good to hear that from the DIA.
That's good. On to the group.
Could I just ask a question? Yeah, just a question about that over Matata. submission on 161. I've just got a very 2 or 3 paragraph sentences effectively. And I'm just wondering, all it says here is we would like continuing support around funding, etc. We note that currently this is not allowed for. Is that it? Is that the sum total of the submission, or have we missed a page?
That's it.
So everything you've said to us now, Ross, is what you understand, but it's not in there.
I think this is from the Untitled Residents Association. So that's just their reference to the CLDP group and the work that's been done, and they're supporting that.
Right.
Support. But I think that if our people need any further information, they can go to the Untitled website.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Find the
And also the group. Again, whole project.
Okay, anything else up to page 160?
Just a question about that. If there is an issue now budgeting for these things, and I don't think we've seen it, should we go through ask the community board to signal priorities and annual spends?
Chair, if I could just comment, in the spread of expenditure.
Yes.
As I said before, 25, 26, there's quite some
That's correct, yeah.
expenditure, but some of that, because of the timing of the CLT, things may have to be brought forward.
Well, that's what I was, yes.
Yeah, and so they'll have discussions with them. I've already alluded that to them, so, and I raise that now as an issue that we looked at. Because the CLDP was a 5-year program.
Yes.
And at this stage, you can't extend it. They're already a year and a half into it, and they're about to go out close, well, very soon, I believe, for tenders for the first project, or maybe the second project. So some of that money might.
So just refer to page 160, and there is a reference to the document that's being attached, but so just our staff just to look into that one.
Must be 9 Mary, but it's 11.9. Same kilobytes, though, it's not.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll just double check. Is it? Ah, okay, right, so that is the attachment.
Yes.
Right, yeah. Okay. So information available on the website. So we're just going to keep moving on.
but if we are going to bring the spending forward, we're going to have to do that on June 1.
No.
Aren't we?
No, we're going to have to, first lot of decision making is on the 5th of June. We then have the 8th of June where we firm up that decision.
Okay.
And so we've got opportunities, but staff will come back to us on June 1.
Okay.
Okay, moving through to page 170. Page 180.
Oh, sorry, Mika, page 176. I was sort of interested in Philip Searle's suggestion that we talking about removing the pine trees from the cape, planting with native, we're doing in part, but not on the whole. And going on to suggest an eco area along the lines of a Kakanui near Dunedin. And it just struck me that it might be worth asking Eric and his team to have a look at that. Colin, what do you think? I mean, is it feasible?
I don't know, Tim. I thought the same thing. Excuse me, that went down the wrong way. In terms of actually putting a fence and fencing the cave off and having it as a livestock, as a biodiversity sanctuary. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I think get some feedback. It was something that the Harbour Area Committee looked at the possibility of, not in great detail, just because of the current uses for it, such as, people walking dogs off leads and those sorts of things, and quite a significant change to say it's going to become an eco-sanctuary.
True.
We can't do that anymore. But we can get Mr. Van Spek to make comment on that. And just on page 163, Councillor Tavendale was just asking about the reference to a playground and whether we can get an opinion from Mr. Van Spek on that. Back to main.
Done back to main.
Yeah.
There are some submissions from the Waihemo board around Dunback as well. So that'll come up later on.
Good as gold. Okay, so right, it's now 1 o'clock and we do have our next speakers here. So Google and team from Hamden Community Energy Group. So welcome along. Come and take a seat. Bring the team. Yeah. Welcome to the chamber again, and floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I say it's nice to see Jim Thompson sitting there representing our corner of the woods again. It's good.
He's not too good. Still shaping it.
Yeah. So thank you very much for having us along. Rachel Welton's here. She's also on the committee with me, and keep me honest. First of all, if you have a copy of the original submission, I noticed with horror that there was a little bit missing on the end of the third point, that there's a key summary points in the third one, and the sentence that somehow has got chopped off, and it should say add on there support for local community initiatives. It's the third point. I don't know if you can get that in there somehow.
Ideally include support for local.
Yeah. Include support for local community initiatives, just on the end of the
check page.
It's on the first page. Oh yeah. Yeah, we rushed it in rather because we heard that it was due at midday rather than 5 o'clock on Friday, which wasn't on your website or on the survey form. So I got a wee bit confused there. Those longer serving councillors here will know that we come in here fairly regularly on the question of climate change and the wish to see you start a conversation with the community. We see that we talk about climate change in the consultation document, but it's mainly around the inventory that you've started. And we'd like to see that extended to a community-wide discussion. We seem to be in a rather schizophrenic situation at the moment, where we're saying we're going to do things to control climate change in a formal sense, but life goes on informally pretty much the same. The sales was interested that the sales of fossil fuel based vehicles are at record levels, even though COVID's been around. People want to get back in their planes as quickly as possible, and most of us do little more than recycle our plastics. And all the time, the window of opportunity to stay below 1.5 degrees is closing rapidly, as that diagram in our submission shows. I think it's really dramatic, that diagram, isn't it? It means basically if we don't do much in the next 10 years, where we just won't make it. And to think about the implications of that, because it's basically no road back. So bottom line. So in our submission, we've interpreted, we'll back that up with our interpretation with some quotes from recent reports on the urgency of the situation. And we've also included some information there on the what we interpret as the statutory responsibility of all councils in New Zealand now to pick it up and start working on it in a proactive way. The Climate Change Commission report will come out, I think it's in about a week. So it seems to us that that's a perfect opportunity, a document that we're all going to have to respond to get to net zero carbon by 2050. And isn't it a good document just to take out and start having meetings with the community and get people thinking about what they can do? It's there for us to use, I'm sure. We've mentioned a couple other things, transport and wildlife. You'll see there the second and third points at the top of the page. The transport one is it's a major emitter, so it's an obvious one to hit. And the wildlife is of particular concern to us in our area, with effect on penguins and so forth. So we know that there's a district-wide plan. The ORC has a district-wide pest and predator control plan, and you have your own biodiversity plan, 2014. So it's really asking for operationalizing that stuff. You know, we're great on sort of planning, and often it just doesn't get down to the grassroots, you know. And we're confident that if you start that conversation, lots of good ideas will flow. So that's what I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, and we're happy to try and answer any questions I might have.
Okay. Councillors.
Yeah, thank you, Dougal. Just looking at one of the things you want us to do is, and the reference is made to it on page 289. You want us to support an outreach program, and on page 291, you talk a bit more detail about that. You say you want us to develop an outreach program that helps residents and businesses develop their own personal, or ratepayers develop their own personal or business emissions reduction plan. So that's more a publicity campaign or an information campaign, I take it. Is that
no, it's not intended to be that way. I mean, essentially, the government has set this goal of zero net carbon by 2050. So we're into some form of reducing emissions. So it's just trying to, I mean, I guess it's the conversation is the first thing, but it leads to hopefully people thinking about how they can develop some sort of decline in their emissions impact.
Would you see us spending money on this? If it's an outreach program, what sort of budget would you attach to it?
Well, I don't know enough about how much things cost to know that, but for example, we just got a little flyer the other day that I think was put out by the disability people and some students. I think it probably went out to all households, and it was just about transport options for disability people, and we were actually included because we've got the EV in Hampden. And I just thought, well, you know, this is the simplest level. It's just to put something out, say, here's the Climate Change Commission's report, you know, here are the key things. You know, put out a little bit of information, just get people thinking about it. But personally, I think at some point it comes down to running meetings, and whatever they cost, I would love to see you guys vote enough to, you know, getting the expertise and saying, look, here's the report. This is the background to it. These are the reasons, these are the problems, these are the challenges. Let's talk about it. You know, what are the options for a farmer? What are the options for a household? What are personal options, you know? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Well, it's, yeah, I think it's trying to have a centre for information, is able to get information more easily to our people. If it's a person, we get the centre of that, and they can help communicate. You know, it's the latest work that's been going on around food supplements for cattle, for example.
Yeah.
Emissions,
yeah. I don't think it's passive though. It's not like an information on the website, because I don't think that's enough use. It's getting people to think about it.
Yeah, it's you're going to people.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, one of the challenges we have as a country is what each of us is doing, but equally it's also understanding, you know, where are the major problems. Have you got any information on district by district where you can look at what various emissions are? So, like, it's always been put in the too hard basket when you ask about these things, but having an understanding of where does Waitaki sit in the scheme of things as far as our net emissions?
yeah. Well, I understand from the consultation document, you're doing an internal inventory.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. You know, that's going to be needed. I think you've got a report on that anyway by 2025 or something. But it's the rest of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How big is the problem?
Yeah. So you'll have your inventory, but as for the district, I can only think that there's consultants and information that they could help advise on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you're absolutely right, Gary, that you can't manage what you can't measure, you know, so you have to have some sort of basic understanding of where your emissions are sector by sector and internally and businesses and private households and transport, you know, that kind of stuff. And then you can start saying, well, that's the thing that we get most bang for buck we can address.
I think, you know, we're feeling this with carbon forestry and issues and so on.
Yeah.
Environments.
Yeah.
Save the environment.
Yeah.
And the pressure that puts on rural and provincial New Zealand, where it's, you know, what the metro is doing to deal with the issues there and so on. So it's, you know, are we carrying, do we end up carrying the cost because metros don't have the land area to deal with it, don't cut back in the same sort of way. So it's understanding that dynamic and making sure we're taking responsibility for ourselves and dealing with our issues here. But, you know, acting locally, but what's happening elsewhere locally.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I was asked to mention within our transport recommendation, the second one there, that the link between Wainakarua and Trotters is the dangerous one for cyclists, and particularly the bridge over the railway down by Karagi there, you know, the overhead one, that's really dangerous for cyclists. So if that stretch from Wainakarua to Trotters could be somehow made safer, then cyclists can basically go all the way from Oamaru. They can go down the old coastal route and they have a safe stretch, and then they can go around Bobby's, you know, around the Goodwood side there. And that's 1 minute, is it? Yeah, and so get a lot of bang for buck there too, just doing that stretch, rather than doing whatever fancy brass and knobs you want on the ocean to Alps one. I think that would be a really good one to do.
Yeah, I think the idea of the coastal cycle trail is ultimately to do that, but doing it in sections.
Yeah. We want ours put up there. Yeah.
Do you think it would be possible, you know, like you talk about the overbridge over the railway line there? Yeah. Straight. The potential could be that cyclists could just go separate to the road. Go over the railway line.
Yeah.
Pretty safe, I would have thought.
The other thing, Gary, that comes to mind on transport is, remember we talked about working in with Network Waitaki. Network Waitaki, with the idea of continuing to offer what you guys were. We were unique in the whole of the country, I think, in that all the electricity for EVs was free. And I thought, well, that would have been a great way just to continue that. $4 to charge your EV if you do it at home. So that means you can do 25 charges for $100. So it wouldn't have been much to fund, and it would have encouraged people when they get their new vehicles to get EVs, you know, just little things like that, just incentives.
I did talk to Network Waitaki, and yeah, their concern is how often it was being used and how much cumulatively it was adding.
Yeah.
Okay. Easy for people to need. I think that was a logical stop for them to charge up and come to one room and so on.
Yeah.
Which is good for wider business, but not so good for theirs. Is there, they went on to charge net, I think.
Yeah, they are.
They charging the users or the charge net pricing?
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
But that's pretty high.
Yeah. No,
Big jump.
yeah, that we're lucky in that they've given us a grant so that we put in a separate account and got a chit. So anyone who uses the EV can still get free electricity for the moment, but it relies on a grant. And if it was fully commercial, it gets up towards petrol costs. So it's not a big saving. But it's still good for carbon, you know, but yeah.
It's that additional incentive.
Yeah.
For people to switch.
Yeah.
Councillor Holding.
Thanks for the submission. You mentioned again wildlife in your area, specifically more yellow-eyed penguins. I think we've had about 3 or 4 submissions on the yellow-eyed penguins. Have any suggestions of what we could be doing? It seems like there's a lot of talk from different agencies at different levels.
Yeah. Well, can really only comment on our area, but what I think would be good was if you could do an overlay or something and designate a trial protection strip, say from roughly our place at Meraki, the north side of Meraki down to Shag Point, and keep dogs off that area. You know, make it a special wildlife stretch. Would be really good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Combined with the trapping and things that are going on, hunting and everything.
Yeah, they've I don't know whether Bronwyn Judge will come in later on, but they're trapping down at Carnegie Beach, and just on a small, you know, when they're doing that works at the moment, just on one of those little outlets, I think they've caught just informally something like 4 cats and a possum and two stoats, you know, like just in quite a small area. So the penguins are getting hammered there. But it seems to be an area, they always seem to go back to the same place they come from, you know, so they want to go back there all the time. Yeah, but she'll no doubt, if she's coming in, she'll tell you about that.
Yeah, because it's just, I know you said you missed something out, but I think we have as well. Councillor Williams and I have just been checking. Your submission ends incompletely on our page 292 with your point 111, and you start to talk about how we have to give effect to the partially operative Otago Regional Policy Statement. But it just that the value of a clean atmosphere extends beyond, and then it vanishes, and our next page is blank. So I don't think we've got
the next 2 pages of blank.
Yeah, but I don't think so.
It goes on to photos.
So what I'm saying is I don't think we've got the full submission. So can
Oh,
that
right.
be addressed for our information, please?
Yeah, there's points 12 and 13 as well.
Right, so
You're
we're
missing that, are you?
Yeah.
All right.
Officers can't have thought much of that.
I was going to ask a question, Gary.
No, if you've got a copy of them there, Dougal.
Yeah.
If you can leave that with us, and we'll get those extra
Sure.
pages shared with us. So it goes to there's 2 pages with shows sort of logos on or design on them, but there's nothing else, no words.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's
You've got the diagram, have you?
Yes.
You've got the graph.
the graph.
Yes. And a very good graph.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
But the photo there was on the stream here, and then the next 3 photos are all Whitestone Geopark, which has no relationship to him. I mean, the energy, so I couldn't quite tie
I
it up.
thought that was.
I thought it was a supportive.
I biodiversity.
We'll get that shared with us, so that's fine. Anyway, that's great. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you all.
Coming up and taking time to come and see us. Sharing the information.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Right, councillors, if we could go, if you restep those pages back to, just a minute, please.
Sorry.
going back to where we were. So the next one is page 24 on the verbals.
Right.
But once you're on there, if we then go to the non-verbals and we got up to page 170.
Can I just ask very quickly, before we go to the non-verbals, since we've now established that April Hayes Dixon isn't.
I'm just wanting to check on that later, but we'll go to the
Okay,
non-verbals.
right,
Just do
all right.
those. So anything through to
You know,
170?
be patient. Just get there.
I was patient. That's why I signaled what I was doing. Through to 180, is it? Right.
170 to 180.
Yes.
Oh, cover the eco park, haven't we?
Page 181 to 190.
Yeah, I mean, future, I think on page 181, Lee Brito talks about leave the corporate jargon and speak of the other public communications, plain English. I actually thought the team did pretty well, so I'm not quite sure what she was totally referring to there.
Community outcomes, strategic priorities. They're me.
Okay. Through to 200. So the, this is page 197 is Steve Daly. This is, I think, his personal submission. Is it right, Ross? Yeah.
I'd like to speak to that new future, just on point one, he's correct in terms of the new section bringing cyclists up the top of the Binmore Dam. And at the recent Arbury Community Board meeting, there was a discussion again putting a sign there, so people knew where Untitled was and which way the Australian Trail went, to try and ensure people went the right direction, because people who are staying for the night in Untitled can head off down the back of Lake Agenmore. They have to be rescued or become somewhat annoyed, yes.
So is that at the community board meeting?
Yes.
Has it happened at the joint committee?
I advised the Lucy and White, the trail manager of that request. So
it was obvious on opening day, there was a problem there when one of the first people through headed off and still been out in Otago. A long way away from Otago.
right.
So yeah, it definitely needs to happen. Need to do what we can, encourage them to to stop off.
Can somebody explain, Colin, perhaps, or Ross, Mr. Daly's suggestion or solution is get the section from Otamatata to Avonmore completed off-road. Is that right?
Yes, it's on this side of
So that'll be on
Waitaki side of the lake.
So, right, so the other, this new section is the back road, right?
No, new section between, so it's cutting in Binmore Dam, follows the lake shore around Binmore, top of Binmore Dam.
Yeah, and it says the riders are using the back road to Avonmore.
That's down my main side of Lake.
Oh.
We want to bring them down the Waitaki side, not the Waimeti side of Lake.
For some reason, okay, I had it in mind that it was lakefront. Okay.
It needs to be on the lakefront.
So
It needs to be, Chair, needs to be on the south side of Avonmore, not on the Waimeti side. And so taking it off road will mean people come down the dam, down the track that's already there into Otamatata. That township gets a benefit, and you carry on down to Avonmore on the south side of the lake.
No.
And off the main road.
Not on the main road.
Just also had a comment from Tavendale on page 182 mentioned, as has been mentioned a number of other times, food scraps and waste and what we can do with them. She wonders whether we can get the Resource Recovery Trust to make comment, or perhaps voting our waste organisation person, waste advisor.
Well, yeah.
Okay, anything through to page 210?
So that's from 200 to 210.
Okay, and then through to 220.
Mr. Mayor, just I noticed in 214, the school is supporting the proposed stadium. I know we will come to it later on, but I just would like to ask the question. From my understanding, so far, no one from the proposed stadium has actually reached out to East Otago High School and asked, you know, are they interested in, we really need to be conscious that we come from Marama to Flag Swamp and places beyond, so that people actually have a say.
Yeah, there was a reference to the sports person there not having been talked to, whether they've been talked with the principal or not, because I know there have been discussions through the Principals Association side of things. But having said that, I don't know whether the East Otago principal, whether Marcus is part of Waitaki one or whether it's part of the Marine one. So we'll double check on that, because you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that we're building a facility do go here. It's going to be servicing this community. Okay, anything else through to 220?
Yeah, just if somebody can help us, on page 222, we have a submission from somebody who's just identified as Ian. I know there's an address and things and a phone number, but so I guess we'll accept the submission, but can we, at some point it would be useful to have the other name.
Chair, I'd like to just draw your attention to page 224, question 13. I think the council does a pretty good job of doing each thing. That's really just noting.
Yes. Indeed. Okay. Anything else through to 230?
Is it just, yes, just looking at Damien McNamara's submission, I happened to hear an interview on radio over the weekend about LEDs, and evidence was given, the assertion was made by a professor from Canterbury University that they can, the density can be reduced. And I think in fairness, he also asserted more evidence for sort of sleep disturbance and so on that might previously have been established. I do think it's possible. I do think we should be asking our roading department to see what, if any, steps they can take to mitigate the effect of these bulbs, these lights. I know he's linked it to climate change, but he also talks about light pollution is causing 10%. It's also, the academic on the weekend argued it was as big an issue as climate change, to be honest.
I think be good to get an update, see if there's anything more recent in that space. There's lots of conversations happening all over the place on these things. Good to get an understanding. As far as page 222 goes, ends in theory. Super database. Is there anything else through 230? 240? Mm. 250.
Still there. Nick Urcher on page 246, and a comment about recycling and about there's quite a number of comments about recycling, and including some of them talk about the Waitaki Resource Recovery Trust in terms of utilising that group to a better extent, a large greater extent.
Okay. That's holding.
I just saw page 246, might be just the time to mention now, there's a couple of submissions about new for the hospital. Local initiative going now, if anyone, individuals or businesses would like to contribute towards it, I think you can purchase a chair for around $270. Council members might have some more information on. It's a good opportunity if people did want to the hospital. Opportunity to do it.
I have a flyer on it, and it has been emailed out to lots of local businesses. But it'd be great if we could support the emailers and the more widely out into the community, because I don't think we know about it yet. But yeah, $270 a chair. They need approximately 180 chairs.
What, just for ordinary seating?
It's to replace ones that have been damaged during the course of anything that happens in the hospital, which I won't go into.
Okay. Also just a question from Councillor Towndale, page 246, reference to playground equipment. Wondering if we can get an update from staff on where our playgrounds currently are, and so we can weigh up where these suggestions are and whether they are doubling up in areas or they actually are filling a gap. It's be a reasonable suggestion. Right, councillors, we'll go back to verbals again. So welcome Pauline Waits to the council chamber. Afternoon, Pauline.
Afternoon, everyone.
How are you?
Oh, nice and warm in here now. I've been doing Meals on Wheels this morning and keep, well, you've got to keep going, haven't you?
Yes.
Enough you are over 80.
So you're allowed to keep going 5 minutes.
Oh, where's the time? Yes. Please tick if you'd like to speak to your submission. Yes. Community outcomes strategy.
24.
Now, the Oamaru, community outcomes and strategic priorities, page 8. Question: what do you think council should be doing to help achieve our community outcomes? Well, I've got on here, the Oamaru Public Library is very good for the young and older people indeed, and they're always willing to help you. And also, can I keep going?
Yes.
And Helen Elgar is very good for our safer community. She does an excellent job. And Marion Shaw and the ladies up there. Now that's, and then the next one I've got here, by using the sanitizer as we go to shop is quite sufficient in my view. Now the next one, climate change, being sensible about heating. Oh, where have I got it here? Oh, sanitizer, yeah, climate change. And then it's got here, what would you like to see council focus on in a response to climate change? Being sensible about heating our homes, for example, having a choice of wood or gas and oil heating, or coal if it's used properly at night, as long as chimneys are swept regularly. The next one at the bottom of the page, what waste minimization education activities would you like to see council doing? By paying for this as we do, by paying for this as we all do with private refuge collectors. I think that'd be a good idea, because everybody being responsible for the refuge and getting a private contractor like Armour Bins or the other ones, this is the only way, and it will keep rates down. It's the most sensible idea. What else have I got? That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, now where the hell did I put that? Oh, yes. I think it must be over here. What? Yeah, I tick no, because I mean, if you're not going to use the thing, well, why would I want to support it? We've got the Waitaki thing behind the girls' high school, and then I know they want to play footy in that indoors, but I know what it costs at an Eden Stadium. We haven't got enough money for us retired people to fork out for that, because I don't use it. End of story.
Righto.
I
did have one question for you, Pauline.
What have you got?
You mentioned Helen Elgar is doing a very good job. She's going to possibly use this in her negotiations for a pay increase, so we might have to pay her more.
Well, she deserves it. She's nice, yeah. We need people at night for safer communities, because it's just dynamite at night. When I come out of the book launch the other night, there's all the scumbags going around. I bummed a ride home because I could get down there, but you don't know who's on the street. Okay. Where is everybody today?
Oh, they're all zooming in. They're all watching on live stream. Okay. Next up, we've got CCS Disability Action, and they're joining us via Zoom. Very shortly. Mary, if you can hear us. Oh, you've got your unmuted.
Thank you.
Right, so welcome along, Mary. Thanks very much for joining us. And yeah, if you'd just like to talk about your submission on behalf of CCS Disability Action.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to join the submission process, and also to join by Zoom. It's been much easier to be able to do this. I would just want to talk really about public transport in Oamaru, and whilst we understand fully that it is the Otago Regional Council's role, we also see that in their 10-year plan, their long-term plan, they've alluded to the possibility of some sort of demand-driven transport service in Oamaru. And we are urging the council to make a very strong argument for this, because we thoroughly believe that there is a role for a demand-driven transport in Oamaru. The feedback that we have from people is that it's very difficult to move around, to get to places. And when you get feedback like that, we also know from our experience and also from research that it means there are a lot of people that are missing out. So those people aren't able to carry out activities of daily life, just basic things like going to visit friends or walking or going to the doctor, anything like that. So that's our main thing that we want the council to do. Having discussed the project with some people in ECAN, the key feedback that we have from them is that it's making a difference to people. People are doing things that they've never done before. And they're not huge things. They're things like visiting family or friends. And that's what life's all about, is family and friends and being able to do those things. So that's what we would really like you to do. Then should that be successful, then the other part of it is for the council to provide accessible infrastructure for whatever sort of demand service there is. I know that in Timaru they have virtual bus stops. Some of those are really good, but for the odd person, you know, in rest homes and things like that, still people could probably use that service were the location of the virtual bus stop marked on the road. Just some pretty basic things like that, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. You ready for some questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, right, councillors. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for the submission. A couple of questions. Forgive me, this is not intended to be contentious, but you want us to change our descriptions in the community section from connected inclusive communities to equitable inclusive communities. And I'm just wondering, I don't mean to be, we had a comment earlier about language that people have to translate. Is there a simple way of putting equitable? I mean, I presume you're talking about access, or is that too simple and too narrow?
Because of that we're a disability organisation, access is where we start, but something being accessible, to be truly accessible, it has to be equitable. And that main thing is that everybody can use things, or everyone can access things. Yeah. Equitable is a word that's being used more often, and perhaps an increasing value for councils. So it's just that whole point of looking at, I mean, I suppose I could ask you a question now. Do you know who's missing in Oamaru? Do you know who's not going to town, who can't go to the doctor, who can't join in social events because either they can't get there under their own steam because there isn't an accessible route, or there's no on-demand form of public transport that's affordable? Yeah.
If you're asking me, I would say one of the groups that I haven't encountered it come into that category would be elderly people, particularly frailer older women living alone.
Yeah.
That's one group. I just encountered them picking up books for our book sale soon, but many of them have either do have limited access to vehicles from friends or family and so on.
Yes.
I think, I think you make a good point, because Jim's gone straight to the obvious one, but there's probably people of all ages who for different reasons can't access in the same sort of way. So, but we take that point, and I think the good thing for us is we have a very good, very strong group in Safer Waitaki, which helps identify where those issues are more easily. It's about us translating what they can tell us into action to make sure we're providing services and accessibility to things to encourage that. So, so I certainly take on board what you're saying, and it's an interesting question. How can we convert that into meaningful change?
And some of those things are around, the jargon is measuring diversity or participation, but there are some quite simple ways that you can do that. And one is a pedestrian street count that we have used, where when you count everyone crossing cordon, but also count a subset of people with a predetermined visible mobility aid, and then calculate the percentage and compare with what you might think that would be in the rest, what we know in the rest of the country would be about 3%. Or NZTA Wakakotahi also have a process called a community street review, and that could be a project for Safer Waitaki, where you choose a certain route or certain section of the town and get people with varying abilities to assess that and forward back information. And we could support you to do some of those projects.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Alston.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for your submission. Just a question I note from the bottom of page, which page is in yours, page 29 in ours. You note about street accessibility audits to be a routine part of planned maintenance and improvements. So is that is there some opinion from your members that the streets in Oamaru are not that accessible for people who may be disabled? Or?
Yes, generally that's the case, and it's the case across New Zealand. And I know that in Oamaru, because of the long, thin layout of it, and then with the South Hill at the other end, that people do have trouble. So perhaps someone that uses a mobility scooter or a power wheelchair, and they lived at the north end, they couldn't just get in their scooter and stick to one side of the road and carry along the road. Often people have to cross backwards towards the crossback because of the curb ramps and things which are too steep or not proper crossing places. And that's just a legacy that all councils have received, because we've got, you know, the average life of a footpath is 70 years. And our design standards are pretty old, and the ones we have now are outdated. But I do comment that they're changing soon. Yeah, so that is an issue. So quite a good idea is to perhaps, and you've done this with, started on with this with the network operating framework. But I must thank you for inviting us for that workshop, is working out where people go and then tracking the route and making sure that the crossing points, etc., are suitable. Yes, so nowhere in New Zealand is totally accessible, so the council doesn't have that on its own.
Thank you. Councillor McRogan.
Yes, Mary, thank you. Just a question for you. With your experience with other councils, how successful have you been in dealing with them and the regional council? Any suggestions of what works and doesn't work?
Is that in relation to advocating for the demand-driven transport?
Demand transport, for example.
Yes, I think you've really got to show the need, and perhaps some personal stories of people in Oamaru who are unable to move about, who would be able to. I think quite often though, and there definitely is a need, you must be very difficult. You know, just looking at the data and the information, I know that Environment Canterbury are releasing a report about their My Way transport, but I don't know when that's due. And we'd be happy to work with you again on that. Because there's only one draft on in that 10-year plan. That's what they've suggested at the moment. I think you've really got to push for it. Yeah, sorry, that's not much of an answer.
Thank you very much. I think you've given us some good thinking and some potential solutions in there, and we certainly appreciate your offer of assistance along the way. So thank you very much for making your submission from CCS, and look forward to continuing to work alongside the organisation.
Yes, yeah. Thank you too. And I would just like to say that whilst I'm based in Dunedin, I know that the local branch has a good relationship with the council, and that they really value that, and that you're working really hard to improve access. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Mary.
Yes, bye.
Bye. Right, councillors, we now move to Helen Brooks. Good afternoon, Dr. Brooks.
Good afternoon.
So page 220,
Good afternoon to you.
submission 221.
Well, as you'll see, I've actually challenged the issue as to whether or not the rate increases and the budgets that have been put together are actually affordable. by individuals and by the community in general. Okay. I want to start, please, by actually reading my recommendations because they're rather challenging and I make no apology for them. Okay.
We have read through, so.
You have read through, okay. Well, I mean, the first one relates to having another look at the work that's actually proposed with respect to roading and with respect to water, because that constitutes about 55% of the council spend over the next 10 years, okay? And secondly, I mean, the issue with respect to calling in the loans that have already been made and are actually out there in the community have been made from so-called unspent rates, which unspent rates generally, in my experience, consisted of depreciation monies that are collected in and they sit there in reserves until such time as they're actually needed. Okay, well, the level of spend that's actually been predicted, my view is they're needed now. And the thing that motivated me to actually put a submission in the first place was the comment in the consultation document that actually says the loans, and I'm looking at page 18, the loans will actually be, that have been made, will be repaid progressively over the 10 years of this long-term plan. Okay, now you've been sitting on these reserves for some time, and I'm not against irrigation, and I'm certainly not against helping project in the community. I mean, the property we sold, we actually put spray irrigation on it. So I'm definitely not against irrigation. It's just as, do you spend money that you're going to have to borrow, or do you actually spend money that's been held in reserves and been made available to other parties outside of council? So those are my two recommendations in order to try and reduce the capital spend, particularly for next year, the first 5 years of your 10-year plan, and over the whole 10-year plan. Having had a look at the development contributions and financial contributions document and totaling up the spend for the water supplies, I mean, it's actually scary how much money's going to be spent over the next 10 years. 83 million on water alone. And if you actually, probably most of you saw this article in today's ODT, I mean, the assumption on which that projected spend has been based is the fact that present day costs will largely remain fixed in concrete over the next 10 years. And we all know that that would be a fallacious way of approaching a budget. Okay, so I also looked at, I mean, council does take account of the effect of rate rises on elderly people like myself. Okay, but there's a wider group out there that you need to think about as well. It's paradoxical as far as I'm concerned, that you've actually had a look at the superannuance situation without looking at the 8% increase for people who live in the lowest capital value properties in Oamaru. I mean, one would predict really that if you're going to be having an increase, you don't levy the highest rate of the increase at people in the lowest capital value. If you actually have a look at here's my piece of paper, my document. If you actually have a look at the decile rating of the schools where there's the greatest concentration of lower capital value properties in Oamaru, it actually says on this document that I have, the socioeconomic decile indicates the socioeconomic status of the school's zone or catchment. A decile of 1 indicates the school draws from a poor area. A decile of 10 indicates the school draws from a well-off area. And we've got Pembroke sitting there at a decile rating of 3, and that's 3 out of 10.
So why, oh, why? You know, Labor people, that category with the biggest rate increase as far as the urban Oamaru rates are concerned. Was that about telling me I need to stop?
You have 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. In terms of looking at calling in the loans that are already out there, I mean, in your revenue and financing policy, the funding principles, the critical one is capital expenditure to replace assets that reach their projected economic life is firstly funded from rates which accumulate in asset renewal reserves until they're needed. And I can only reiterate the first point that I made, the time is now. It's not having loans gradually paid off. We're talking about around 20 million over a 10-year period.
Thank you. Just to give you, just to respond a wee bit to that one, because it's something that a number of you raised.
Yes.
If we do what you say, rates will actually go up higher, because what we're doing at the moment, we've got that money, it is set aside for specific things, so it hadn't been needed at the time. Got it loaned out at a rate of around 2 to 3%.
Which isn't going to make anyone rich.
Which isn't going to make anyone rich, but equally we're borrowing it at under 1%. So we actually make money on the difference, and that helps to keep rates down that little bit. Not much, but it makes it a little bit. So there is reason as to why we do that. The other one, just around the lower value properties, that is a problem with the tools we are given around rating. We had a revaluation last year. The lower price properties were the ones that went up by the highest percentage. That doesn't collect us any extra dollars as such, but when you actually then overlay it with the overall increase, it meant that they paid a higher proportion compared to other properties. We knew that was going to happen. There wasn't a lot that we could do about that, because it's the blunt tools that we use. And unfortunately, that's just the way it's gone this time with valuation. So not something we would like, but you know, you've pointed that out as being an issue, and it is an issue, and we need to be looking at, is there other ways of taking some of that pain away from those people, because it's a major challenge.
I mean, mitigation is going to be ever so important for people on low fixed incomes, and some of those will be in the category of the lowest capital value properties. And
yes, you're right. and here we are dealing with the tools that we're given and consulting on our plan, and central government spent billions of dollars last week to consult a single person. There is an irony in that in itself as well.
Yes, and when I saw the article about the increase in rates for ORC, around 70% for some properties, I thought, what am I worrying about? But nonetheless, I do care, and I do care about people who have not many dollars to spend to try and make their family work over a period of time. And I mean, 300 million taken out of this community over 10 years. I mean, what's that going to do for the economic development of this community? It's to a large extent, it's actually going to make the community even more dependent on dollars from outside the region, outside the Waitaki District, through tourism development. What would happen if council was the biggest spender in the Waitaki District? What would that do to our economy?
The choices we have is, you know, is this necessary spending, and then it's like, how do we manage to spend as much of it as possible within the district, so that not as much goes out of the district. Those are challenges that we face all the time, and we have to try and align with getting on and, you know, making the decisions we need to make. So I just need to find out if there's any questions from other councillors.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'm just picking up on Mayor's point. You're saying that we should bring the loans in early, and presumably you want us to spend that money straight away rather than
Not
wait.
necessarily. I mean, the place for it, according to your funding policy, is actually reserves.
Yes.
And I mean, bear in mind that the first loans to the NOIC scheme occurred pre-2006, because that's when the scheme was commissioned.
Correct.
Yeah.
But is just my understanding, what we've been told by officers, is that based on depreciation and replacement and life cycles of infrastructure, there are some very big peaks of expenditure coming up in about 10, 15, maybe 20 years' time.
Yes.
And this money is accumulating so that on the day when all that dosh is needed, we've got everything in hand and we don't need to raise a lot of money in 1 year or borrow a lot later. So in the meantime, we're lending it out, as Gary has said, we're actually saving ratepayers' money by generating an interest stream. So why would you not want us to do that?
Well, I mean, you as councillors, you may not be aware of the fact that one of the main drivers for water schemes putting themselves together and establishing Corridor Water Management, which was an organisation approved by council, was the fact that as individual water schemes, we couldn't get access to depreciation money. I chaired the Awamoko scheme for nearly 15 years and continually encountered a situation where, I mean, for example, Matt Singer's property, a main line, a lateral coming off the main line, had a leak in it 20 metres inside their boundary. Within 6 months, there was a second leak about a metre away from the first leak, and a third leak up a little bit further. That line should have been replaced, not continually repaired. But we couldn't have access to the depreciation accounts in order to replace an existing line. And that's wrong. And that's a fact. I'm telling you facts.
Okay, so that's not something we're aware of, and it's certainly not a factor in whether the loans are out there.
No.
The reality is on the loans,
yes,
the day we get those repaid, our income is actually going to drop down and we'll have to rate more. But as far as access to depreciation, the engineers do have a process of sweating the asset and so on, and making sure that the intention is that they measure how many repairs are being done on any length of pipe before they replace it. For a certain period, it's better just to fix it, and then it gets to the stage where actually no, you've got to replace it. So we'll ask the question on that particular one. But
I mean, it's historic because the change to corridor water has actually opened up the purse strings with respect to depreciation money.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt there's some major costs coming to those schemes, and that's according to the drinking water standards, etc. So we've got you and us have got our own challenges on that front coming. Waitaki's in a good place overall around water for the most part, but pointed out it's been there's another 85 million to spend over the next 10 years.
That's right, and that includes that includes a significant spend for Oamaru ratepayers as well.
Yes.
Okay. And I just wonder a question to you, to the councillors, whether you realise the impact of actually charging for the development, I mean for growth by way of development contributions in terms of a cubic metre of water instead of a unit or a point.
Just on that, so I saw your figures and so on. So basically what they're stating it is to equalise it is by stating it by cubic metre. The reality is that schemes are on different measurements. So likes of Oho, they are something like 600 litres a day versus the normal 1200 litres a day elsewhere and so on. So they don't all mean the same thing when it comes to units or points. So what they've done is made a cubic rate. So we absolutely understand the problems around development contribution. I don't know if you've had to pay any power development contributions lately, but they're extreme. I trust follow you on that one. The reality is, I mean, that, yeah, again, we're looking at how do we lower that cost, because that's based on that in Wahoo, it's going to be a $1.5 million upgrade to their water.
Yes.
Does it need to be that? Can it be less? That would bring that price down significantly. It was only $1 million.
Yes.
So anyway, this work.
But it's a population issue and numbers of consumers per scheme issue. And if you increase the development contribution levy significantly, then farmers will opt out completely.
That's the rest.
And in the likes of the Windsor scheme, I mean, you can kiss goodbye to that. Awamoko lost 20 points very recently.
That's the risk, and
well,
it doesn't mean we've got a lot of choice though either. But anyway, of course, I need to wrap this up because. But
the point is, the consumer does have a choice.
Yes, they do.
Some of them.
Yes, they do.
Not all of them. Some of them. Yes.
Anyway, thank you very much for having.
Well, I didn't make the submission idly, I can tell you that.
Thank you very much. Okay, councillors, we'll just get a few more of the non-verbal. Take a break, go and very much. So, I think we've got page 250. Anything else up to 260? Find yourselves again.
Please.
Don't worry about the, you're on page 260. Excellent.
Yeah, right.
Okay, anything to 270? Page 280.
So you mean between 270 and 280? Yes.
Trying to say quite so much. It's obvious by now.
It probably is. I'm slower than a maker.
Fine time. And then when we get into 280 to 290, we're just note it's quite a number of immediate school kids, pupils. Obviously had a good lesson in civics. And,
good class project.
Made some good submissions. Made more sense than some of you. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not saying who, Jim. Okay, no, there were some good comments. So it goes through 280, 290. $300. Okay. Probably a good spot to finish up for this session. So we'll reconvene at 4 o'clock to keep going through the non-verbals. Try and get through the bulk of them today, because we're just not going to get much time tomorrow to do them. So we won't be live streaming that part, because otherwise you're going to have a half there between live stream. Yeah, sorry. So that's the way it is. So with that, I just thank those who have joined us today on the live stream. Thank all those who have made submissions, and we'll be back again by live stream tomorrow at 10:30. Thank you very much. During the meeting.